Welcome, everyone. Good to be here with you. Met some of you last week, and from other times I've come to sub for Eve. Eve and I have been longtime friends and colleagues, and we've collaborated in a few different ways. Right now, we are collaborating for a climate resilience course at UCSF with another one of our colleagues, Alyssa Ethel, and so that is something that is really, feels like a really good project to be working on right now. And I'm always so happy to come here with this community and feel very honored to be here in Eve's place. So my name's Nicole, for those of you I haven't met, and we are actually taking on a theme over the course of this month. Eve is away on retreat, and so I'm stepping in, and we're creating a full arc of experience. And the name of this series I've titled Entering the Cave of the Heart, How to Transform Threat into Challenge. And really it is about this going into the cave of the heart. How you create this feeling of safety and sanctuary within yourself is how we keep showing up. If we feel and allow the feeling of chaos, the fear, the overwhelm to become how we feel inside all the time, we don't have any refuge, right? Oh, okay, so now they're having a hard time hearing me, huh? Okay.
I can hear you perfectly, so maybe people need to turn you up. My volume is not excessively loud. Actually, it's in the lower range, so people just need to turn you up. The sound is fine. I have the typical computer set up.
Okay, for some. Okay. Keep me posted. We'll make sure
Okay,
that
I
everybody...
have somebody saying it's fine. Okay.
Okay, great, and we shall proceed. There we go. And that's how life is, right? It's actually quite fitting for the topic that we're moving into tonight. Last week, we covered the subject of relaxing as it is. By the way, we're moving through a book by Pema Chodron, so we're calling upon the wisdom of Pema Chodron as we move through this month, and going through the book, When Things Fall Apart. It is a book that I read a while ago and have picked up again, and it has really been resonating with me in these times that feel so unpredictable and chaotic. Every sentence that I read feels incredibly meaningful and imbued with such deep wisdom. And so that's why we're moving through this particular book in this moment. Tonight, we're going to take up the subject of working with 3 methods of working with chaos. How do we respond in a way that is both impactful and also productive to the chaos that we're being subjected to right now in this world, in all of its various ways. So Pema has 3 distinct methods for working with chaos, and we'll be working through those together. And just so you know what's coming around the corner, next week, we'll be looking at finding intimacy with fear. Finding intimacy with fear, some very light topics, huh? So last week, we spent a lot of time finding what I would call resourcing within ourselves, finding this kind of cave of the heart, this sanctuary, this self-compassion, this inner compassion that we can generate and amplify within ourselves. It's a really necessary step. And I'm going to be bringing us back to that step every single time we meet, because unless we feel some degree of safety within our own bodies, we can't possibly work with any fear or any difficult emotion, any difficult sensation that is arising in the moment. It's part of how our nervous system works. Part of my specialty is I'm not only a meditation teacher, but I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm a trauma-informed meditation and yoga teacher. And so I am very passionate about bringing in practices that help us to calm our nervous systems, help us to feel a sense of safety. What is recommended with trauma-informed practice in general is you always need to start with safety. You always need to start with a sense of safety within your body. When you feel safety within your body, your brain is available to be able to creatively look toward solutions and look toward opening in a flexible way to seeing your way through any challenge that you face. It's more primed to be in more of a growth mindset. So, all that to say, I'm going to keep on bringing us back to how do we find a sense of safety within. So I invite you, as we get started, we're going to start with a short embodied practice, and then we'll open up to some seated meditation, and there will also be some sound. You see I have my harmonium here. I'm also a singer. So we'll get all three elements of music, movement, and mindfulness in this experience tonight. So, sitting here as you are, scan your body and try to identify one part in your body that could use a little bit of care, whatever that means to you. And perhaps you just send your attention, send the awareness from your mind to that area of your body, or maybe you actually take your hands and touch that place on your body. With your eyes open or closed, your choice. Taking a few breaths, and with each breath, particularly with each inhale, think of filling that space with warmth, with ease, maybe with love. Simply noticing if you feel any shifting in that area of your body. Even simple touch is a powerful way to give ourselves a sense of safety, self-care. Sometimes that is an effective tool and it's enough. What we'll move into next is a little sway from side to side. Little sway from side to side, and you can keep your hands where they were touching, or you can let them relax. I'll invite you to come back to a sway anytime you want. A little bit less traditional of a instruction for meditation practice, but sometimes this is exactly what is needed to come back to a calm and present space. Swaying from side to side, rocking, is a great way to soothe the nervous system anytime you feel overwhelmed, feel anxiety, feel fear. We'll add one more piece to this, and take your hands and cross your forearms, bring them to opposite shoulders if you're able. Right? You could also just do this in your mind if you're not able or don't want to do this part. Then you'll take one hand and tap your shoulder and go from side to side and keep on swaying. So now we're beginning to layer a few different self-soothing practices on top of one another. We're deepening our breath as we're swaying and tapping the hands one after the other on the opposite shoulder is doing what is called bilateral stimulation. We are stimulating both hemispheres of our brain, promoting connection and soothing. All right, and then when you feel ready, allowing that to settle, maybe relaxing your arms down by your sides. And part of what is tricky with chaos is it throws you off balance. So I want us to do a little tiny experiment just to kind of reveal how we naturally find our balance again and again all the time. So you can stand all the way up, or if you want an extra challenge, and I'm going to do it this way so that the camera doesn't cut me off. Stand up for just a moment. Just a moment. All right. You might come into a squat, or you might stand all the way up. If your muscles on your legs get tired, then you can always stand all the way up. Now, arms can be forward, they can be wherever they fall naturally. Now I invite you to close your eyes. Notice how your body creates these subtle adjustments in order to maintain balance. Suddenly, a standing pose that felt static, that felt solid, that felt like it was unmoving, becomes dynamic, flexible. Even standing still in one place, there's constant change that we adapt to. Those of you squatting, your legs getting tired yet? Yeah? Okay. And then I invite you to open your eyes again, coming back. And you may sit down again. So we'll continue that journey with one more step from a seated position. Now, I invite you to start to move just kind of spontaneously in a wave-like motion forward, back, side to side. You might want to come closer to the edge of your seat for this. And if you can imagine, there's some sort of outside force like water or like wind. So you can imagine yourself as seaweed or as a tree. And there's outside forces that are moving you in different directions. And your job is to respond by kind of allowing your body to move along with the outside forces rather than bracing or resisting. And then let's switch for a moment and actively brace against it, right? Actively brace against it, still imagining that you're maybe in the ocean or it's really windy day, but you're just stiff, resisting the movement. And then again, you're moving along with the outside forces, allowing them to gently move you from side to side. And then allowing yourself to come back to stillness, but knowing that that movement is always available. That even sitting in relative stillness here, supported by the chair, supported by any other props or blankets or cushions, we do have these subtle movements that are happening all of the time. So, little playful exercise at the outset here. And it's important to bring this into our bodies in a way that we can help ourselves to feel it. I often think of this as the process, you know, speaking of the unexpected. We have the car alarm. Those of you online, I don't know if you can hear, but there's a car alarm going off outside. And I think that we'll use this as a moment to just notice. If we focus in on the sound of the car alarm, disruption, what does it feel like as it lands in the body? Do you feel yourself resisting and pushing against it? What would it feel like if instead you invited the car alarm to be a part of the experience? What does it mean to soften and allow the sound to be there? Perfect timing too, because oftentimes what happens when we have a disruption, we find that eventually it'll crest and subside. So now the car alarm is gone. All right, so we have this cresting and we have this subsiding. Because the only constant is change. The only constant is change. It's like the surfer on the surfboard. When you're surfing, you actually want your body, you want it to be strong, but you want it to be pliable, flexible, adaptable, moving with the waves. If you got up onto a surfboard and you were very, very tight and rigid, you would fall off of the surfboard every single time. I have a couple uncles that are surfers. I've tried it a couple times myself, but I haven't really kind of gotten any real skill in it. But any time that I've tried and every time I talk to my uncles, I'm really struck by how much Dharma there is in surfing, right? The philosophy of surfing, of accepting what is, being one with everything. You really have to be in that mindset of becoming one with the water and one with the wave in order to ride the waves. So it really is this lesson in riding the waves of our lives. So our job tonight is to become surfers, whatever that means to you. Whatever that means to you. So I'll start off with a question and we will dive into some more practice again. But just based on that brief little practice that we did, welcome, come on in. Based on what I've shared thus far and based on our short little practice, embodied practice, my question for you is, what parts of you feel most adaptable and flexible, open and curious? What parts of you feel playful? And what are the conditions that help you to be in that kind of open, adaptable, curious, flexible space? Are there certain people? Are there certain environments? Are there particular activities? So I'd love to hear from you. What are the things that help you to be flexible, especially when things are challenging?
I have the mic, so I'm just going to go ahead and share. The first thing I thought of were my friends and family. I think the playful and curious got me, and I think that's where I'm most supported and playful and safe, is with my friends and family.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing, for starting this.
I have a teacher who says, everything real is metaphoric, everything metaphoric is real. And if I do not start my day with a physical stretching regimen, then I'm not as emotionally or as cognitively or as spiritually flexible unless I start by flexing my physique.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, and so wise to bring the body into it, because I think that we can often, especially in this particular culture in the US, we can have the brain and the body so separated, right? We feel like we're kind of cut off, and part of us lives up here and then part of us lives down here, and the reality is that there's really no separation, right? The mind brain is always influencing the body, and the body is always influencing the brain. And if you think about the nervous system and the kind of amount of activity that is even around the heart and the gut, the kind of neural networks around the heart and the gut are pretty much functional brains. And we tend to think that the brain up in here, up in the skull, reigns supreme. And we're cutting ourselves off from all the wisdom that is beneath it. And so we're cutting ourselves off from all of that resource. So I love that you shared this, because what we're doing is reminder every day. I move my body. I move my body so that I can open up to that connection. Right? So all of my wisdom, all of my intelligence can be accessed that way. That is the ultimate type of flexibility. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone online? Oh, Jason. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, I think you unmuted and then muted again. There we go.
Is that good?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that in terms of connecting with a moment of like I think of like the hand as the connected. When I'm feeling really unsettled, I reach for something to touch, almost like the Buddha touched the ground, and I'm usually not anywhere near the ground. And but I tend to do this a lot now, just like touch my heart and let my hand just kind of stay there until whatever I'm feeling passes. And it's an amazing ritual now. I just do it all the time because these days I feel like all this fear and anger and frustration. And if I just do that, it kind of brings me into the present, and then it does dissipate. It just goes away. It ultimately goes away, but if I don't do that, it spins out of control. So it's really like connecting with that the mind of my heart, it
Love
settles
it.
me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jason. And I just want to draw our attention to the wisdom in that. We're connecting with the body. Right? We're saying, no, okay, I'm going to be with my body. I'm going to be with my senses. I'm going to be with the heart, right? And use that as a resource in order to come down from this kind of overwhelm, this spiraling, this spinning. It's so, the body has such wisdom, right? And the wonderful thing about our very advanced brains is that we can actually turn our attention to notice what is happening in the body, right? If we choose to. And the body can be something that we fear, But if we spend enough time with it, we know that it can also be our best friend. Regardless of what is going on, we know that it has its own pulse, its own rhythm, its own way of providing a natural type of resource and self-compassion. Right, so coming back to the heart, coming back to the body, we can notice that sensations, that emotions, they all have cycles. They don't last forever. They teach us about change. Yes, I see another hand up.
Hi, yes. I think if you, sorry, when I start to get disorganized and overwhelmed and need to center myself, and or remember that what's happening outside of me is not what's happening, doesn't have to be what's happening inside of me. I focus on like my torso, and because often for me, I'm clenching and things just feel really out of sorts, particularly, in the abdominal area. And so I imagine that it is swirling in a clockwise direction. Because our galaxy does, our planet does, the whole universe spins in a clockwise direction. And so I just picture the swirling in a clockwise direction. For me, I have it like inverted this way, but you could also do it, that way. And I find it very soothing to feel the sensation of everything that's so discombobulated coming into synchronicity with everything around me.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is another great example of when energy in any form feels stuck within our brains, within our bodies. Usually there is a correlate. When we feel stuck in our brains, usually it shows up somewhere in the body if we're paying close enough attention. So as first I'll say, that's fantastic that you're paying close enough attention to know where it shows up in the body. And nothing in nature, which we are part of nature, nothing in nature wants to stay stuck. Even rock is changing all the time, is adapting, is moving, is shifting, is changing form, building, deteriorating. So the idea of thinking of this clockwise motion, this movement and connecting, so it's not only moving from this stuckness into flow again, I would venture to say. So we're coming into flow. Not only were you coming into flow in ourselves, but you also are creating another resource in connecting it with how nature moves, how the universe moves, and seeing that as another connecting point and resource, and an acknowledgement that we're a part of something much greater than just our individual selves. So fantastic. It's really beautiful. Love that. I'm going to be trying that. Anyone else? Please.
The first thing that came to my mind was being in nature. And I think in general, that's calming for me, and yeah, just allows me to feel all the good things that you're talking about. But one thing that kind of came to mind to me after I had sat with that for a while was kind of, even just beyond being in nature, just being in a space where like other people's energy isn't so dense. So like being in a really crowded room, super stressful. But like, if you're like, or even just being too close to another person, if their energy is like a lot. So like, I feel like, yeah, I think nature is like the ultimate, like, it's totally open and expansive. But even if I like go to another room where there's no one there, and I can just be like, yeah, dealing only really with my own energy. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing. And we find a lot of resource in each other, right? We find a lot of calm, a lot of safety in groups of people where we can kind of drop in and feel safe. We have these things called mirror neurons, so we can kind of sense into how we're all showing up. That's why spaces like this that we create together, the containers that we create together like this, for a specific purpose, can really help us to feel soothed and calm. Yeah, so I notice immediately within this space coming together for this express purpose of being mindful, being present, doing practice together, we are helping each other to what is called co-regulate, right? We are literally having a positive calming effect on one another by just being present, by just being here. It's funny, earlier today I was at a conference for a bunch of executives in finance, and we were talking about the innovations in AI. And I was noticing how much faster the pace of speaking was, how much more holding there was in even my body, but in everyone's body. It just was so rapid and so held, and so, I want to say even kind of manufactured in such a way that isn't really in concert with how nature moves. I love that you said you brought in nature. Would you say that nature, when you're in a place where you feel a sense of awe, where you feel that calming, does it feel really fast and all over the place? Or does it feel a little bit slower? Anybody could just say.
Definitely slower.
Slower, yeah, it feels slower. I'm a little bit biased with this because I believe in the practice of slowing down and the benefit of that. And it was very clear to me that that wasn't the calculus of how people were showing up and what they valued a lot of the time today. And so I think that more and more people like us who invest in these practices can slowly start to influence and have this ripple effect with creating that sense of calm, which is very apparent to me how much it's needed in our world. Anybody else has anything that they'd like to share? I don't want to prevent you from, but if we feel complete, we can move on. Yeah, please.
So for me, it's when you said flexibility, music comes to mind.
Music.
And so sometimes when I can't be in nature, because I love nature too, but I'll just like turn on music and, just like I imagine the like kind of like the music notes, the music waves coming out of the speaker, and then like, I just kind of like in my head I'm moving the way the note is expressed, I guess you can say. So yeah, for me, music is just like it definitely brings me down and grounds me, but also keeps me moving, right? So and then to nature, I would add that it's definitely slower, but it always has a rhythm to it.
True.
And so yeah,
Like music.
Yeah.
Like music.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. music is also something that can bring about a great sense of awe. Any of the arts can. Dr. Keltner from UC Berkeley, who wrote the book with the title Awe, talks about several different forms of experience that bring about the sense of awe. Nature is definitely one of them. Music and the arts is another one. Another one, and the number one way that we feel a sense of awe, this comes back to what I was talking about a moment ago, is this thing called moral beauty. And moral beauty is when you observe someone in the world, someone you know, someone you don't know, but something that you admire that somebody does out in the world. Something altruistic, something selfless, something that gives you a sense of admiration, deep admiration and respect for someone else is actually the number one form that they found reliably brought about awe through studying the effects of awe. So, we inspire one another. Yes, please.
Usually in person, or it's just mentally admire?
I think that it's both. So even if, say, you have someone, it's funny, I was just listening to an interview with Jane Goodall, and it did give me this sense of admiration, awe, respect, and inspiration. It made me feel inspired. We can inspire each other to show up in the world in a different way. So absolutely can be somebody that you've never even met. Maybe somebody who's not even still alive in this realm, right? But it's the sense of feeling a deep sense of admiration for acts that people have done. It's a great question. Yeah. Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's something I feel like I often forget about and overlook until I'm in a moment where I see something. And I totally get being inspired by people who've done amazing things. And then often, I might just be walking around or out somewhere kind of benign and see someone I don't know helping someone else I don't know. And I mean, it could be something as simple as somebody dropped their wallet and somebody's like, hey, sir or ma'am, and returns it, or somebody falls, or, just in those moments, I always say it restores my faith in humanity. And especially on days where, if I'm particularly feeling like a little bummed out or like, oh man, like something happened at work or, and I'm just kind of a little bit miffed with humans in general, to see that is just it's such a juxtaposition, and, it's really heartwarming. And I feel like that sense of awe for me is much greater than the awe of, somebody who does these big, monumentous things in life, which is also really amazing and inspiring, but it's almost like, I don't know, we don't have to do these, random acts of kindness for people and strangers, but somehow we all do. And, and I think just having those reminders is, it often happens at the times where I feel like I need it most. And so, yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned that. I often forget about it until I'm in that moment.
Right. And those small little acts of kindness, we don't know how, we might be the person that is being observed doing something kind. And other people could remind us to be kind and to show up for others in our lives. And the impact is great. It's much, much bigger than we ever could think, right? And there is something really special, I will say, about observing something like that, some random act of kindness happening in person with somebody that you don't know, don't have any preconceived notions about, don't have any history with. It's kind of contagious, right? It makes you want to do those kinds of things too, right? So it is that extra incentive to notice how we're showing up every moment and maybe slowing down enough to show up for the moments of our lives with care and to see the people around us, right? I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Is it okay to crosstalk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What the person just shared reminded me of bucket filling. I don't know if anybody there has heard of this. There's actually children's books and adults books, but it's a way of thinking about how you move through the world, and how other people do, where the concept is everybody's born with an invisible bucket. And when you do kind things, when you witness kind things being done, it fills your bucket. And then the opposite is also true, that when you do unkind things or witness unkind things, it empties your bucket. And I think it's a really beautiful concept. And I wanted to put out there in case anybody has the skills to do something around this, because it just occurred to me that it would be very beneficial in this time right now. When I was teaching, I had a like a suggestion box, and I had the kids submit when they witnessed kindness. You couldn't submit for yourself. You couldn't submit either, um, being the receiver or the doer. It had to be something you witnessed. And then we would tally them up, and who like the it was a thing. The class that won got to dye my hair a temporary color, and they loved it and it was fun. But I was thinking that right now in this time, that having some place that people could just go and like note when they have witnessed kindness in the world right now, that it could be very therapeutic and healing for everybody to be able to see that. And I don't have the skills to implement that in some way that's accessible to people, but I wanted to put it out there in case somebody in the room is able to or knows somebody who can. I just think it would do a lot for us and our souls right now.
I love that idea. Buckets of kindness? That's amazing. I love that idea. I feel like there should be a bucket of kindness easily on every corner. Every square foot of the earth. We should just have buckets of kindness.
Well, it's so nice to then read them like to the other
Yeah.
people, and they can hear, oftentimes it was students that were observed doing something that they didn't even realize anybody observed. And so, that's nice. And then it also, like you said, motivates the people that they hear this and they're like, oh, somebody picked up trash and just put it in the trash can and it made somebody else feel better. I can do something that simple. Like that's not outside of, my abilities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and really the kind of changes that we're seeking in this world today, it happens with a combination of small acts of altruism, small acts of kindness. It is the combination. I think that so often we can get stuck with these times that feel so uncertain and chaotic, in this state of apathy and feeling immobilized and ineffective, right? It doesn't take very much. And if we do something small and someone else observes, then it becomes contagious. And we literally can create a ripple effect by just a very small amount. So I love that. I think that the charge forward is just do something, right? Do what you can. Do some small thing. And who knows what will happen. Jason, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth, too. That's a really powerful idea, and I may try to do something. But anyway, that's a different thing. What I wanted to say is generosity is the key, because that's really where I feel it in myself when I give, and the giving is the kind of feeding. It's like the bucket, when you give away, you receive. There's a kind of a heart. It's that moral something morally is happening. And one of the things that the comments about music brought up the fact that when I'm around a musician, and I'll just use Prince as an example because he's like, you go to a Prince concert and it's like generous music. The music is so generous and you feel this giving quality. And it's not, there's so many concerts I go to where it was all right. But like when you feel a generous musician really giving, it is awesome. It's completely out of this world. And just in mind with that, Neil Young went down and played for the victims of the LA fires. And just that to me is like, it just makes, I read about, I'm trying to avoid headlines, but I read that headline and it just made my heart feel wide open. So it's like, I don't know, it's just bringing generosity into it is key for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So much for bringing that in. Sharing even moments, so it could be something very practical, but it also could be sharing moments of beauty and joy. Whereas showing people, yeah, there's still beauty. We still can connect with joy, right? And I feel like that's a lot of what music brings. It brings this kind of expansive, open sort of mindset. It promotes this kind of expansion within yourself. Love it. I would love for us to move into a little meditation practice. This is going to be based on a lot of what we've been talking about finding enough resource within ourselves to be able to track changes and to kind of feel waves of sensation, of emotion, of whatever we're experiencing, of thought. A lot of these types of meditation are done for craving, right? For managing craving. Sometimes they're called urge surfing. So I'll guide us through it so that we can kind of play with this idea of being with even sensations, emotions that might feel a little bit intense in a way that's a little bit more playful. Some other resources that I want to give to you as we move into this practice, and I'm going to encourage you to use with all of the practices that we do over this month. Sometimes when it feels too overwhelming, we might want to come back to swaying. That could be a really good resource. Another way that we can come back to calm and presence if anything ever feels too overwhelming is we can actually open our eyes and look around the space that we're in, find something that we can connect with and maybe sit with that helps to calm us. So as we move into this practice, I'm going to invite us to do, it's called orienting. There's something about the way that our brains work from an evolutionary perspective that looking around and seeing that our environment is contained, is safe, has a physiological effect inside of us. So look around the space that we're in. Just noticing, and for those of you online, you're looking around the space that you're in. And if you find anything that feels interesting or pleasant to connect with, maybe you get curious about, you can spend a little bit of time with it. You don't have to keep looking around. You might notice what's showing up inside of your body. You might think of a little description of what it looks like, the colors, the textures, shapes. When you feel ready and able, you can come back to the place that you're sitting with your head, your gaze forward, and make any adjustments that you need to with your body as we get ready for our practice. Knowing full well that if you need to shift your position at any point in time throughout the practice, you have complete permission to do so. Trying to be as still as possible, but also knowing that you can shift your position if you need to. Now, I invite you to either soften your gaze or close your eyes. And as we begin to move into this kind of urge surfing meditation practice, this noticing the waves of experience, of sensation, first, I invite you to notice any subtle movements that are happening in your body in this seated position. You might notice that your torso is moving ever so slightly. You could notice the movement that happens with each inhale and exhale. You might notice the beating of your heart or the movements of digestion. And feeling that shifting, changing, which is really the essence of aliveness. Now that we've spent a few moments tapping into subtle shifting, it's happening all the time internally. I invite you to think of one small thing that from time to time you crave. It could be a particular type of beverage. It could be a particular type of food. Savory, sweet, umami. It could be a particular type of activity. It could be a place. Just thinking of one small thing, try to keep it something that feels manageable to be with for this practice. So a craving that maybe shows up from time to time, but not something that is overwhelming or pervasive. And this craving could be craving for something that is indulgent, or it could be a craving for something that is healthy. Getting a picture in your mind of that one thing. Example for me, it's ice cream. What is it for you? Now that you have a connection, picture in your mind's eye, felt sense of your linkage, your connection with this thing. I invite you to imagine yourself getting closer to that thing, feeling the craving increase to be nearer, to draw it close, or to take a bite, to take a drink. Noticing the sensations that you feel in your body. Where does the craving reside? Does the activity stay in one place? Is it the same pace? Is the activity more or less? You may notice a difference in temperature. We notice tingling sensation. Disconnecting with this sense of craving inside you, what does it feel like? What are the impulses that arise? And as you notice that building desire, that craving, the impulse to come closer, to obtaining that object, to being with it, ingesting it perhaps. I'd like you to take a few breaths and imagine that you're going to decide to simply observe what arises and decide not to come nearer to that object or to take that in. What changes, what shifts? Do you notice a difference in intensity? And perhaps, when might you notice that some intensity is releasing or subsiding? When do you notice that the grip that the craving had begin to soften, release? And can you ride it all the way back to the calm shore like a surfer? Coming into contact with and noticing how craving works within us, how it intensifies and how it subsides. invite you at your own pace to come into contact with this thing that brings about craving. One more time. Trying to think of it as another wave that is cresting, imagining yourself getting nearer, feeling the wanting, the pull toward increase, the decision to not connect with that impulse, to follow that impulse. Noticing what happens inside, how long it takes to subside and how it subsides. Just notice that in some silence, tracking it within yourself. Spending a few more moments riding that wave to the shore. As we begin to transition back into the space we've created here together, I invite you to take some deeper breaths. When you feel ready and able, you may slowly open your eyes if they've been closed. If it feels good to stretch, you can stretch. If it feels helpful to look around the space, orient, you may do that as well. So thank you so much for joining me in the urge surfing practice. I am really curious about how that felt for you, but I want to bring in a little bit of context from what we're covering in When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. And then we'll open up to some more sharing about this and about our reflections on this chapter. So this week, we're diving in how we relate to chaos and how we work with chaos, I should say. And Pema Chodron in this chapter, chapter 19 in the book, if you're following along, has some very specific recommendations. Has 3 in particular, and the main focus is on how we stop struggling against ourselves. Part of the reason that I decided to bring in an urge surfing meditation practice today is because we get to have a very tangible, felt experience with how to amplify and connect with that kind of tension, the urge, the craving, the like I want, I need, I must have. That kind of struggle, the internal struggle. And then having the experience of saying, I'm not going to respond to that, right? And how if we decide that we are going to ride that wave and we can notice that internal struggle, we can actually find a way through it and start to train ourselves in showing up in a different way. But as is often the case with these sorts of things, the way beyond this struggle is actually through it, right? Through it, facing it, turning toward it, noticing what is happening inside. Until we're able to do that, we can't possibly ride the wave down to the calm shore. All we do is delude ourselves into thinking that we're solving the issue, but creating more and more and more layers of resistance against that. So a lot of what is talked about in this chapter is how do we stop struggling? The way that we stop struggling is acceptance. Okay, yes, this is, I'm going to turn toward it. I'm going to observe it. I'm going to get curious about it. I'm going to get really curious about it. I'm going to see what I can learn from it. So, it says, I'm going to read a direct quote. That this is the primary method for working with painful situations. Global pain, domestic pain, any pain at all. We can stop struggling with what occurs and see its true face without calling it the enemy. It helps to remember that our practice is not about accomplishing anything, not about winning or losing, but about ceasing to struggle and relaxing as it is. So we have our theme from last week. How do we keep on coming back to relaxing as it is? There's a reason why we started in week 1 with relaxing as it is. Guess what? We got to keep on going back to that. That is the primary lesson. How do we train ourselves, regardless of what is arising in our lives, to find ways to come back to relaxation and presence? Right? That is how we are available enough to do these small acts of kindness, to inspire others with moral beauty, to increase this sensation of awe, so that we can see this sea change toward positive, toward good. So, it says this is what we are doing when we sit down to meditate. Relaxing as it is. That attitude spreads into the rest of our lives. It's like inviting what scares us to introduce itself and hang around for a while. Whoa, that doesn't sound very pleasant, does it? Sounds pretty radical. But also, the more comfortable we get with it, the better we get at it, right? The more capacity we have to be with more and more intensity, right? If there was ever a time to develop this skill, it's now. It's now. And as the teacher Milarepa sang to the monsters he found in his cave, this is kind of referring back to a story within Buddhism, Milarepa, It is wonderful you demons came today. You must come again tomorrow. From time to time, we should converse. Right? This is what we're talking about. Inviting chaos, inviting monsters to come close. Not because we like torturing ourselves, right? But because things show up, and the more that we can befriend and try to get curious about and understand how we can work with these forces that show up in our lives, the more we can enjoy our lives, the more we can be present, the more effective we can be. So we start by working with some monsters in our mind. Now you're probably wondering, well, she mentioned 3 ways of working with chaos. Yes, so we need to kind of befriend these monsters. And part of how we do that is, number 1, no more struggle. This is already what we've been talking about, already what we've been doing. How do we notice the tension that we're holding in our belly? And maybe find that movement, that spiral that not only brings us back into flow, into harmonious movement within ourselves, but connects us with the movement that naturally happens in nature and in the universe, right? So where are we struggling? And it might feel like really tight, rigid, kind of frozen sort of energy. That might be the struggle. The struggle might also be like everything is all over the place. Within some kind of like modern psychological contexts, a lot of how this is discussed is that we tend to kind of veer toward the 2 polar opposites of chaos or rigidity. And we find ourselves in between quite a bit too, but those are the 2 far extremes. And both are not particularly helpful, right? And has anybody not ever felt chaotic inside? Has anybody not felt tense or rigid inside? Yeah, I don't see any hands up. I'll put my hands down. So just noticing when we feel those kinds of resistant or chaotic, like frenetic energies that show up inside, and like, oh, hello there, this form of monster. What can I learn from you? What are you here to teach me? It's a very kind of growth mindset way to approach this, and this is kind of the essence of what we're doing. So no more struggle. Use poison as medicine is her second recommendation, the second skill to develop. And number 3 is see whatever arises as enlightened wisdom. Right? Not only are we using the poison as medicine, we're saying, oh my gosh, how wonderful. I can learn from this. Right? This is enlightened wisdom. This is the good stuff. How can we see this as not only, ooh, I previously thought this was poison, it's actually medicine. I can learn from this. I can learn from this. It's coming from okay, I don't like this thing, I don't like this thing. Okay, like I'm gonna look at it, I'm just gonna see over there too, like come on in. Like, come on in. Please teach me. Please teach me. So,
Can I share something?
please do.
It falls into the category of, this is not good news, but it's good information.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I deal with it.
Absolutely. Not good news, but good information, right? What is always going to be good information, right? The more that we can open to and accept what is, is gonna be helpful as long as we have the right frame of mind in approaching it. All right, I'm gonna just share one more thing. Big takeaway from this is that whether we regard our situation as heaven or hell depends on our own perception. Depends on our perception. This is not easy stuff. I'm even noticing, maybe you're noticing something similar inside yourself. I'm noticing a little bit of that buzzing of like, ooh, I really want to resist this right now. This doesn't sound very pleasant and I don't really like it, right? Can we just talk about like the cave of the heart and finding sanctuary and being in nature again? Yeah, we can do that. But from time to time, when we feel like we have the capacity for it, this is really good for us to be with this and sit with this. So Pema gives us the pathway how. So just to repeat that again, no more struggle. Use poison as medicine and see whatever arises as enlightened wisdom. It's kind of like a lifetime project, right? How can we keep on inviting ourselves to go there? So I am gonna end with a little bit of music experience, but I do want to leave a few minutes here for any reflections, any sharing. Could be related to the craving, the urge surfing, meditation practice, or could be related to what I just shared from how to work with chaos. Pema Chodron's words. Anybody have anything bubbling up inside? Yeah, please.
Thank you for the meditation. For me, I kind of was picking and choosing a few craving I had. I think they all have some similarity. They have this fiery energy. One is hot pot, and
Okay.
the other is red chili oil, pepper fish,
Oh.
and the third one is cigarettes.
Yum. Okay.
And then I think when you cued where in the body it has the feeling, like for me it's this area underneath my heart, like a little bit solar plexus, but
Yeah.
it's like in between, it's very, very vulnerable, and I almost like I'm mentally sending fire and love to that area, and I do notice the craving is less and less, because initially I'm like, my saliva is like dropping in my body.
Yeah.
So it feels very gentle when I place my awareness to the body, and it's, I think, like to me, like this place is like soft, almost like I was trying to give it attention by almost numbing it, but
Yeah.
I think placing awareness almost like, I don't know, it's like diffusing some sort of like scaffolding in the area.
Absolutely. What a beautiful way of saying it. It's diffusing some sort of scaffolding that you're holding in that area. I think that we can probably all relate to this. Has anybody had something intense arise, regardless of what the form of it is, and you kind of numbed toward that? You just kind of numbed out. You created scaffolding around it. You created maybe like a shield or some sort of protection around that. That's natural. That's natural. Feeling intensity inside, it can be a lot, right? And there are some times when we need that. Right? I'll just come out and say there are some times when that is adaptive and we need it. And when we can be with it and observe and see that it can subside, oh my goodness, that's such a good learning for our bodies, our brains, our nervous system, right? To know that it's not gonna always be overwhelming, that there is change and there is relief. It's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. This was very interesting. So I decided my urge would be to go walk in the little circle of redwood trees on, what do they call it now, Blue Heron Lake.
Yeah.
And because I thought about doing that today and decided before the rains but decided to do a little busy multitasking instead. And I found once I kind of like imagined maybe going to the trees, my legs were very tense and almost had like electrical impulses through them, like they felt like it was disturbing kind of, because it was so powerful. And I struggled with it. I couldn't really get it to relax. Like I kind of like thought to myself, well, I thought of going, I didn't go, let go. Kind of as a little mantra about what happened today. And I couldn't get them to kind of relax. But I also tried to just, relax different parts and go with it until it was time, until you were having us move on a little bit. But then after we did when we came back and stretched a little bit, now they feel okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Like it just kind of like came out of it and all that. But it did make me feel like I have gone to the redwoods a couple times, and I had the impulse to go more often, and I feel like I was blocking that too much.
Sure.
And that was why it was so stuck and powerful.
Wow. I'm so glad that you shared this, because that is oftentimes what we can learn from exploring impulses like that. Is that sometimes the learning is we need to let it go, but sometimes those are very clear signals that we're not paying attention to. Right? Oh, like my body really wants that. Oh, and it's not going away. Maybe perhaps. Whereas it sounds like you kind of got busy doing other things, and that impulse, it wasn't followed. So there's still this need inside your body, right? The body, this is a really good example of the intelligence of your body and how it expresses its needs, right? And so I'm really glad that it resolved once we came out of it and did a little bit of stretching. Sometimes that's what is needed when stuff feels really intense, is you need to draw your attention back outside, or you need to stretch a little bit when it becomes that intense. But what a good learning, what a good lesson there. And will you be going to the redwoods more?
Oh, maybe. No, yes, better, right? Because my legs will talk to
So
me.
your legs are saying yes.
The things that you said about, of course, facing the demon is because that feed your demon is exactly that. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's some exercises like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing. All right. Well, want there to be enough time for us to do our last piece. So if you do have anything that you would like to share, if you have any questions, I would love to offer to stick around for a little bit after. But one thing that is really important, especially when we go into practices that might be a bit intense, that help us to face fear, that help us to face chaos, that help us to observe change. Anytime we do things like this that aren't easy, we do need to come back to things that help to soothe us, to help to ground us, to help us to be right here, right? And part of one strategy for me that is quite reliably effective at doing that is music, is listening to soothing music. And music allows me to connect with this idea of hope. How do we continue to be hopeful, to keep showing up, to fill up buckets of kindness, right? And doing this kind of difficult practice and doing this in community is actually what makes me hopeful. The more of us that are willing to do this, the more we will see humanity transform. And I truly, truly believe that. So this piece, all you have to do is either soften your gaze or close your eyes, get comfortable and listen. And then we'll end after this piece with doing a little bit of what is called bee breathing. It's just humming. So we'll do some humming together as we leave. So getting yourself comfortable, taking a deep breath or two, feeling your shoulders relax down your back, muscles in your face relax. And it's my hope that we can continue to befriend our demons and open up to a fierce kind of hope for ourselves, for this world. Oceanic blue. invite you to either think of a tone inside your head, a kind of a humming or buzzing, or to use your voices to do a gentle hum. When you run out of breath, you can inhale again and hum again. And you may begin whenever you feel ready. Together, create the beautiful music of this life, of this universe, our lives together, coming together to create a beautiful symphony of sound. May we continue to engage in this life, befriending whatever is challenging and learning from it. This is the path, turning poison into medicine. May it be so. If your eyes have been closed, you may open them, coming back into this space. Thank you so very much for being here with me. Thank you for teaching me, for inspiring me, and I'll be here the next 2 weeks and we'll continue on. Next week, we're going to look at how we manage fear.